On today's episode of the Locked On NHL podcast, did the Los Angeles Kings just order an Eggs Benedict with extra Holland days?
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. We are your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. We are your team each and every day. And we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week or the rare opportunity to see both of us wearing different shades of green. My name is Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, joined by JD Young of Locked On Sharks. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about Ken Holland, the magician. He's back. He's back. He is, it sounds like,
maybe
taking
reportedly
Los Angeles Kings job, possibly, potentially. We'll also talk about why nobody wants to be the GM of the New York Islanders. Didn't stop them from getting the first round pick. And Toronto has been here before. A 2-0 lead against the Florida Panthers, and now the series is 2-2. Is it panic time in Toronto? JD, let's talk about Ken Holland. Voldemort has returned from whence he came, which was the Edmonton Oilers. And it's not official yet, but it sounds as though this is the direction that the process is moving after Rob Blake was shown the door by the Kings after a fourth consecutive exit to Ken Holland's former team, the Edmonton Oilers. So I guess the saying goes, if you can't beat them, take their general manager who was fired because he couldn't beat the other
somebody else.
Yeah, he couldn't beat other teams. I guess that's what we take away from this, right?
Yeah, like it'll be interesting because Ken Holland has been the GM of very good teams. You do wonder the credit where that credit goes to, right? Because he steps into the Oilers and you have like McDavid and try you like okay, and again, this is a guy who tried to build around McDavid and Draisaitl, and they can never do anything, right? And never get past the first round. And then all of a sudden he leaves. And guess what the Oilers start doing? They start winning a lot, right? And they get to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, lose it in 7 games to the Florida Panthers. They're having a very strong showing this playoffs. And as we're watching right now, currently up 3-0 against Vegas. But like what? I guess so. If from the Kings' perspective, right, you're getting a guy who has won cups before and has gotten past the first round, which is something that you failed to do since you last won a Stanley Cup in 2014. So I get it. I just can't wait for the dumb trade that he's going to make for Brant Clark for some third-line scrub coming up this summer. It's going to be great. Great.
We've seen this. I've seen this film before, and I didn't like the ending. Taylor Swift. We've seen this with other teams in similar situations where a GM comes into an established team and says, "Well, we need to take this roster and get them playoff ready. Like we need to get them in fighting shape to be able to." Withstand the rigors of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I'm not saying that that's not important, but I think we have a pretty established track record of where this league is headed in the prioritization of multiple lines that can attack you, of players that can provide you speed, can provide skill, can provide skating. Those are the areas that are being more of an emphasis for teams as we go. But you see these pockets of the old guard that are hanging on to their ways and are trying to win. They're trying to go against the tide. And Ken Holland, we were speculating before we even hit record. Why does it feel like Evander Kane has already been traded to the Los Angeles Kings?
100%. That's yes, Evander Kane. Kane's having a solid playoffs right now. Scored tonight, but can't you just see the trade as, especially for Edmonton, who has like 7,000 players with no move clauses, that's probably going to be signing Evan Bouchard to a massive contract with a no move clause coming up. Need to free up some cap space. Vander Kane adds some grit and some depth and some scoring to the LA Kings. Come on down. It's going to be great. Cannot wait for that one. We definitely 100% called it on this podcast here where Vander Kane comes down. But like Holland, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Like what are the Kings supposed to do at this point, right? Is Holland just going to come in and try to like tweak the roster, or do the Kings even just have the dudes at this point? Like I think that's the big question. Can you be like a Hurricane? I don't want to be mean to the Hurricane. It might be a little bit mean to the Hurricanes, right? Hurricanes who are very much like structure. We're going to outshoot you structure. We don't maybe have some of the top end game breakers, right? Like if you put everybody's, best players in the playoffs right now and started doing a draft, like it'd probably be pretty far until you got to a Canes player. I know they have some great players, but like nobody was just like, that's a dude, right? Mikko Rantanen's a dude. Connor McDavid, Draisaitl, those guys are dudes. Can the Kings just be that version, like that, just the West Coast version of the Canes, where we're going to play really awesome defense, we're going to try to smother you, and we're going to just keep shooting the lights out of the puck and that's how we're going to make up for maybe the lack of super high end talent. How far does that get you, man?
I mean, I think we've seen how far that gets you, because the big thing about having one of those guys in your lineup is there's never a question as to who gets the puck in crunch time. There's never a question as to who's going to take the shot. I've missed my last 15 shot attempts, so it's not going to be me. And all of a sudden, if you have a bunch of those types of guys, it tends to kind of run hot and cold at the same time. Yep. And this is kind of what we've seen with this Kings team. And you run into a very fine line of, is this just the best that this roster can do, or is there something you can inject into it to kind of take you up to that next level? The reality of the situation is Anze Kopitar is not getting any younger. He's 37. Nope. And you have guys that I think have
Doughty 35. Like, yeah.
You've got guys that I think have pretty established, like, this is what you're going to get from them.
Yeah.
But with the exception of, Quentin Byfield would maybe be a player that would qualify as like, we don't really know what we have in them yet.
Yeah.
You have a roster with a bunch of guys. And look, I'm not trying to say that to disparage. It's a good roster. Like,
yeah.
They didn't have the record they did at home by accident. They're a very good team. It's just, as you said, because they don't have that number one go-to guy, you have to play more of a team-oriented, heavy defensive structure. And when teams like Dallas, teams like Edmonton are coming at you with waves of pressure,
Colorado,
eventually the dam just breaks. Eventually there is too much water, and it leads to things falling apart. And it did with the Kings. And this might have been the worst. Like, this series might have been the worst example of all, because you had leads in multiple games
against a banged up Oilers team that was just at what was like, dude, we got to start Calvin Pickard. Like, we cannot run out Stuart Skinner anymore. We got to start Calvin Pickard. And yes, Calvin Pickard's been outstanding when he's been in net and made some big saves that Stuart Skinner hasn't been able to. But any longtime Locked On Sharks fan, listener knows I have it this saying, right? Defense is for nerds, right? And the whole premise behind it is, yes, you need to be a strong defensive team, but if you just play a defensive only style, your ceiling is just so high. You can't win every game 2-1. You need to be able to score goals, right? And yes, defense is for nerds. Go score goals because that's what good teams do. Yes, they're also usually good defensively, but you can't just rest and be like, defense wins championships, like the old man, like just shaking his fist right there, like we gotta shut him down and be there. Like, no, the best teams, they don't have to play defense because they're pushing offense, and they are controlling the puck and they are scoring goals and they are putting pressure on you to have to try to keep up. So, yeah, I'm really curious to see what Holland does with this roster. And the Kings, they do have some assets here. They had their first round pick, and what's not a great draft. I would 100% Holland be looking to trade that to try to find something. But again, it's what's out there right now. What do the Kings want? And they do have their cap space. They have cap space, so that they got $23 million in cap space with the pretty full roster. So if they want to be aggressive at free agency, but the free agency class isn't super great either. So yeah, Holland's got his work cut out for him if he's going to try to make a quality breakfast out of this roster.
I will be very interested to see how the Holland days end up with the Los Angeles Kings. That is the subtle art of using a joke 2 different times. The same joke.
We have never ever repeated a joke on this show.
Cam Fowler would never.
Foul on that show.
Cam Fowler would never.
Never.
Defense may or may not win championships, but you know what does? General managers. And the New York Islanders are going to need to find one if they hope to be in Stanley Cup contention here for the 2025-2026 season. We'll talk about that search for the next Islanders GM and why Lou Lamoriello needs to stop doing his best Emperor Palpatine impression and just go.
Cackling.
Just go. Let him take care of it.
Somehow Lamoriello has returned.
Oh boy. We'll talk about the Islanders GM search as we continue today's episode of Locked On NHL after this. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you in search of a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? No more guilt-free snacking. Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are also packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. No more feeling guilty about grabbing a snack while you're watching your favorite team on TV. I have a bag within arm's reach of me at all times when I'm on the couch watching the Wolves or the Wild or the Twins or the Vikings. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. We are your team each and every day as well. And JD, your team is the San Jose Sharks. My team is the Minnesota Wild.
Correct.
We don't know who is going to be helming the New York Islanders at this point because it turns out the GM search for the New York Islanders is getting a little complicated, a little messy, and is leading to a few people saying, I think I'm okay.
Yeah, it's getting Avril Lavigne complicated. And you would wonder, you just got the first pick in the draft. And yes, there isn't a Celebrini or a Bedard, but Michael Misa, Matthew Schaefer, both excellent players that every NHL team would love to have on their team eventually someday. but the shadow of Lou Lamoriello is just casting over this franchise, and you wonder if with him, whatever he's doing, right? If he's down in the basement or full on Palpatine, as you're doing right now, just kind of moving the chess pieces from the, in the dark. Is that just scaring teams away because of, like, again, no matter what, like, it feels like that, like, overbearing parent, right? Who's like, that kid who's like, they're ready to go to college and the parents there every weekend, or like they, always checking up and like just not letting them kind of do their thing. And I mean, at this point, I think I might have to, like, at least inquire if they need like a part-time GM. I can probably do it on the weekends.
Well, it's funny because not only is Lou scaring away, I think, some potential candidates, but this roster as well is in need of some upkeep. There are a lot of different pieces on this roster that are inked to some hefty deals. I mean, Bo Horvat, for one, he's signed till 2031, which is, by my math, that is 6 years away. So that's a hefty price tag at 8.5. Matt Barzal is also signed through 2031. Anders Lee is going to be under contract until he is 36 at $7 million per year. You've got Kyle Palmieri coming off the books, which is a nice little chunk of $5 million to play with. But Anthony Duclair, Pierre Engvall, Casey Cizikas, like this roster needs some work. And if you are a GM, and it's funny because one of the candidates that is heavily linked to this role is, I'm sure, one that is looking to get back into the GM's chair. If you're Mark Bergevin, do you want to take this as your way back in, or do you frankly care at this point?
I mean, there's only 32 or soon to be 34 at some point, but there's only so many GM jobs, right? And every GM thinks, I can fix them, right? I can fix them. I see the warts. I can fix them, though. But it's not like, it's not like you have some budding prospect pool, right? That's getting ready to start to make their way. No, this honestly, this whole thing needs a just completely tear down at this point, and to start fresh, because if not, you're just going to be what you have been. And that's the Isles, who feel like the most creamy middle team that has ever existed over the last couple of years. And yes, I know they went deep in the cup, the playoffs a couple of years ago, but especially after you even look in their history, right? John Tavares was like, dude, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. Brock Nelson looks like he's 75 just because of having to play with the Islanders for so many years. Like, it just, this team of all teams feels like it needs just a complete refresh from top to bottom. And I don't know if you're going to be able to do what needs to be done with Lou Lamoriello hanging around in the shadows doing whatever Lou Lamoriello is doing, right? And it does feel like, because I mean, if you were saying you got the first pick of this upcoming draft, like, this is the perfect time to hit the reset button. You were gifted a pick that you, frankly, no business winning. Gifted a pick where you're going to be getting a really great player, whether it's Misa or Hagens or Schaefer, whomever they decide to pick. But, like, what is this franchise, and what is this franchise going to be? Because they've been trying to hang on with this core, right? And I've heard it. I've seen this picture myself of, we believe in the bones of this roster. We believe, and all you're doing then is you're just wasting time. You're just wasting time until you eventually hit the reset button and actually do a legit rebuild. So, but the Athletic article on this was pretty damning from, just all the people just be like, thanks, but no thanks, man.
Yeah. And it's like, they said, if Holland doesn't get the Kings job, I don't think he's closed the door entirely on the Islanders, but it seems an unlikely pairing at this moment. Gorton, just a number of, it's Bergevin, Jaromir Kakalainen, and Matthew Darsh are the top candidates. But think about this. If you're Tampa Bay Lightning assistant GM Matthew Darsh, do you want to leave? I know the Tampa Bay Lightning, they're kind of in a retool right now.
Yeah.
But are
you
you
still
looking...
have like Braden Point and like you still have like great players that you can actually like high-end elite players that you can retool around, right? What's attractive about the Isles right now, other than the first overall pick?
If I am going to take the Islanders job, I need two things. I need autonomy. I need roster autonomy. I need it in writing that Lou Lamoriello is not going to interfere with the roster. And I need the ability to name my coach day one. Things, I don't take it.
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask for a bag of wonderful pistachios too. Give me some wonderful pistachios in there.
Honey roasted, no shells, please. Please and thank you.
Yeah, I mean it's very fair because it's a tough position to walk into because right you wonder if you're just going to be the guy who cleans up the mess for Lou Lamoriello so that way the next guy can come in and then kind of start taking all the credit for it. So Ken Holland look around the corner 3 years from now at that Isles job.
And it will be very fun to see what the Lamoriello days look like with the Islanders as well, because I feel like this one's going to take a minute to get figured out. This will go into the offseason, which is not great because you got the draft coming up. You got then free agency, and this roster is in need of a cleaning. So I would make the appointment now and just get it done.
It's fair.
Speaking of getting it done, the Toronto Maple Leafs have failed to do so in 2 straight games. They now find themselves tied up with the Florida Panthers 2-2 in their series against the Florida Panthers. So what's the level of concern for the Toronto Maple Leafs considering, I don't know, the history that they have of postseason.
The Maple Leafs in general.
The
points, gestures. Yes.
The noted playoff history that they have of just general misery and non-fun escapades. We'll take the temperature of the room to finish today's episode of Locked On NHL after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On NHL. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen each and every day. We are your team each and every day as well. Finishing up by talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. And JD, it was 2-0 Toronto. Mm-hmm. It was very nearly 3-0 Toronto.
Yep.
However, the Panthers found it. They battled back, and then what did they do in Game 4? They found it. They battled back, and we now have we have a tie score, and that's a great spot to start. I think is a 2-0 loss to the Panthers in Game 4, and I don't know if I'm just reading a little bit too much into the tea leaves here, but it feels like all the Florida Panthers needed was a feeling that they were back in this series to get back to playing their game and imposing their will. I mean, 23 shots on goal by the Maple Leafs in Game 4. They had a hard time. They had a hard time really getting anything going, and it was a penalty parade. 9 total power plays between the two teams. But, it feels like Florida has really found something these last couple of games after just, and it's not like they lost heavily. They lost 5-4 and 4-3, but it feels like they've gotten back to playing their style of hockey here in these last 2 games, which has led them to winning both and has maybe led to a little bit of doubt creeping in for Maple Leafs fans.
Yeah. And like you said, it was just the kind of the style, right? Where it feels like Florida is like, we want to drag you down to the mud and suffocate you because we feel like we can, like, if it gets dirty, we feel like we have the players who can play dirty, right? Hi, Sam Bennett, future Minnesota Wild forward one day, but
Now we're talking.
or Matthew Tkachuk, or like Aaron Ekblad with his like multiple suspensions. They just feel like a team that's like, you know what, we're going to make you play at our level because we're just better at it right now. So I'm not too worried if I'm the Leafs, because first of all, you knew this thing was not going to be like over in 5 games, right? Not with the Panthers. That this team is they're too good, they're too battle tested. You knew they were going to bounce back, right? Going back home for game 5, you got a couple days off here. You know, the hope is like Auston Matthews, who's been very quiet. I know sounds like he's dealing with something. Is something he's been dealing with all season. He's got to step up here, right? And you need to get some goals from him. I think of all people, or just some production from him. I think of all people would be a huge boon to the Leafs, but I do think they need to come out strong in game 5, right? You can't come out and have four shots on goal in the first period like they did in game 4, followed up by 8 shots on goal in the second period. So you had 12 shots on goal in the first 40 minutes, and then 11 shots on goal in the third period when you're trying to come back in that game. So I do think, though, for the Leafs, like, it's going to be very important to kind of come out and set the tone, and don't let the Panthers drag you down to the mud, right? You need to set the tone. And I think the Leafs are best when they're playing with speed, they're playing with skill, and they're just trying, like, I don't want to say turn into a track meet, but I think you kind of almost want to turn game 5 into a track meet and just say, like, we've been playing your style the past 2 games. We're not going to do it this game. We're going to push the pace, and because we think we have way more guys at the top who can provide compared to you guys. So I'm not worried if the Panthers come out and win game 5. Yeah, buddy, this one might be over in 6 then, because I just don't believe the Leafs can, like, especially that game 6 going back down to Florida, like, long travel. I think if Florida would want to try to finish this thing off and not head back to Toronto. So I think if the Panthers win game 5, I think this thing's over.
And it'll be very interesting to see how this game plays out, because these have all been close games. And so I kind of get the sense of, like, how the series played out between the Minnesota Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights. They're all 1-goal games. Maybe have 1-2 goal win here and there. I do wonder, with the fact that these teams have each come up a goal short a couple of times. You know, let's say you have a game that goes to overtime and you suffer kind of a heartbreaker there. Mm-hmm. If that is kind of the moment that is too hard to overcome, is like throwing it all out there and coming up just short in OT. Like, if the Maple Leafs would all of a sudden storm back and win one in OT and get that emotional lift, like, would the Panthers be able to come back from that? I think they would probably be more equipped to. If the Maple Leafs were to suffer that sort of an overtime loss, like they did in game 3.
Or like the Draisaitl goal, like, you know, where something like that happens, where it's just like, oh my God. Like, Edmonton's had like a bunch of this, you know, like, you look, even the first series against the Kings, right, where they come storming back, and then the Kings score like literally like 20 seconds later and they lose game 1, right? Like, for you see Edmonton, right, give up a game against Vegas, which Vegas probably deserved to win that, but Edmonton was right in there. They were ready to go to like overtime. Like, they thought, if we get to overtime, it's a brand new game. You give up a goal with 0.4 seconds left. Like, if that happens to the Leafs, like,
yeah. My worry on the emotional letdown side is always the team that is feeling more pressure. And in this case, Toronto.
It's always Toronto. It's always Toronto. Like, Yeah, there's no team, I think, in the NHL that's feeling more pressure than Toronto, because it's just Toronto, right? It's just the market of Toronto and stuff. Like, yeah, and yeah, I am curious, like how they start Game 5 is going to be very intriguing to me, and how, like, if they can come out and push back and set the pace and play their style of hockey and try to make Florida keep up. So
yeah,
we'll see.
it's gonna be very interesting.
Who do you think wins
see.
it? We're best of 3. Who do you think wins the series?
I think Florida. I mean, as much as I'd like to see Toronto finally be given a break, I don't think it comes here.
It's too funny. It's too funny to keep it going.
Like,
yeah.
it's just easy to pencil it in as like, they won one round, but that's all they get.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's Florida until, again, I know they have a lot of miles on them, but that team has seen it, done it all. And I think that they can just drag, like I said, I think they can just drag the Leafs into the mud here and say, we can win this game 2-1. Even though I just talked about you can't win every game 2-1. The Panthers have shown they can win games 5-4. They can win games 2-0. Like, whatever style of game you want to play, we're more than happy to play it, and we think we can do it better than you. So,
yeah, well, it'll be very interesting to see what the Panthers' days look like here as this series unfolds. See, that was the one that didn't land, but I felt like I should try it anyway. It's okay. It's okay. Fear not, because we're done. Today's episode is over. So, appreciate everybody for tuning in as you do each and every day throughout the week. Make sure to like and subscribe if you have not already. We'll continue to keep an eye on these series and the other series remaining throughout the rest of the NHL playoffs. So make sure to stay close to Locked On NHL so you don't miss out on any breaking news, any big upsets, anything. We've got you covered. We have new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.